Thank you so much. It is a pleasure and an honor to present the report. For the audience, I'm going to ask at the end where these flags are from. So I'll answer, I promise, all your questions, but I'll have 4 questions for you as well. I'm sure this we are all aware, and this most of us are aware, but I'll ask you about these 2 perhaps. So I got a scholarship in 2013 and it was extended for 1 year, no cost extension. Disclosure of commercial interest, so neither I nor my immediate family members have a financial relationship with a commercial organization that may have a direct or indirect interest in the content of this presentation or my project. Being a radiologist, the next disclosure would be, of course, I have no money, like my friends in the room. Cardiovascular disease and cancer. So my project was about combining the 2 issues, healthcare problems that cause the most amount of morbidity and mortality in our patients. Cardiovascular disease obviously is number 1 and cancer is number 2. So the United States spends approximately $3 trillion each year on healthcare, consuming more than 18% of its GDP. We are all aware of that fact. 14.5 million Americans with a history of cancer were alive on January 1, 2014, and this number continues to soar, it continues to grow. Expected in 2024 is that there will be approximately 19 million cancer survivors, 9.3 million males and 9.6 million females. Cardiovascular disease encumbers a large proportion of health costs, with estimated direct costs of $444 billion annually, and obviously there are indirect costs which are not all calculable. Screening and early detection in US, nearly 1 in 3 adults have some form of cardiovascular disease, and the economic burden of healthcare costs are largely attributed to the high costs of secondary prevention and end-of-life care. The potential for early cardiovascular disease screening to offset burdensome cardiovascular disease costs is very attractive, but the problem is that we don't have supportive evidence. As in the case of lung, breast and colon cancer, screening is the cornerstone of preventive health and is considered economically favorable, as the benefits of early detection offset costs of care, resulting in a reduced prevalence of more advanced disease and expensive downstream treatment. So the background of my project was that radiation therapy, as we know, is critical for treatment of many benign and malignant tumors. It is well established that cancer survivors who have undergone radiotherapy exhibit a long-term survival rate that is significantly lags behind age and gender-matched populations. So once a patient is cured of cancer, and we are aware of the fact that the cancer is not going to come back and hit them, they still have poor prognosis or less survival, and the reason for that is cardiovascular disease comes in, whether it could be heart failure, it could be myocardial infarction, it could be stroke, or it could even be peripheral vascular disease. Growing number of patients are now outliving their cancer, which is an established fact, and are presenting with long-term sequelae of cancer treatment. So, premise of the project was a prospective screening study for cancer survivors based upon patient, caregiver and support group preferences. Our intention was to study cardiovascular disease in cancer survivors at an early stage and try and find markers in their blood that would correlate with early disease activity. The methods in our project have the potential to develop a blood test that would predict at-risk patients who can then have their vasculature assessed to preempt and prevent TIA or stroke. It is the same as prostate-specific agent that the men over 40 get once a year, and if PSA is elevated, then further sort of imaging or intervention is considered. So the primary objective was to identify candidate metabolites characteristic of vascular disease by a correlation between plaque inflammation, which was a direct measure by imaging, with inflammatory markers in blood that are surrogate markers. Secondary aim was to assess the effects of radiation dose and time elapsed since radiation on plaque and inflammation, both in the plaque and in the bloodstream. So rationale was that there are multiple genetic and environmental risk factors that contribute to cardiovascular disease and its adverse effects, so that an integrated set of markers is likely to support the best practice models. So here you have the risk factors, early subclinical disease and resultant ailment. Genetic biomarkers playing a role at this end of the spectrum, imaging biomarkers at this end of the spectrum, and then you've got the circulating biomarkers which play a role throughout the disease from its inception till to its affliction. So atherosclerosis and inflammation in cancer survivors, as I said, we recruit, our strategy was to recruit cancer survivors 20 years, 22 years or older who were cancer free for at least 5 years, because as we know that it is 3 to 5 years when most of the cancers come back. So we wanted to make sure that at least majority of our recruits remain cancer free. We would recruit these patients into our study, have 3 cohorts, patients 5 to 8 years post-treatment, patients 9 to 12 years post-treatment, and patients 13 to 16 years post-treatment, and I'll explain the rationale of doing this. Consent and screening, imaging and blood tests, and then an analysis and corroboration of results to determine dose and time since radiation treatment, and how that would correlate with blood markers and imaging manifestations. Another arm of our study was to institute treatment, have 2 cohorts, institute treatment in one of the cohorts, which would be statins and salicylates, and see how does that act with the different stages of the disease, whether there was any point in time where the disease was reversible if we got it early versus slowing down of the disease. So regression versus slowing of the disease. So preliminary research, we did several experiments in humans in which we were able to characterize the plaque constituents accurately. This was a rad path correlation, which is gold standard for imaging, where we would do the MR in pre-carotid endarterectomy patients where plaque would be removed, then assessed on MRI once again, so in vivo, ex vivo, and then pathologic analysis of the plaque to make sure that what we were seeing on imaging, or what we were calling fatty plaque or hemorrhagic plaque on imaging, would be also corroborated, those findings corroborated on PAT. So preliminary research, here we can see a patient that was 24-year-old, 3 years post tonsillar cancer, received radiation treatment, was cancer free, and you can see the amount of plaque build-up on the side where the patient received radiation treatment. So in 3 years, a 24-year-old, you can see the thickness of the vessel wall intermedia is more than double. So if this patient was to go on and live another, 24-year-old life expectancy, if the patient was going to live another 40, 50 years, you can well imagine how the disease would manifest and what issues the disease could cause in this patient. So study timeline and expectations: expected study time 3 years. We expect the use of metabolomics and genomics technology to support affordable disease surveillance and forecasting models in a similar manner to the one used by National Weather Service to predict the timing, occurrence, path and intensity of hurricanes. Now I know the National Weather Service is not always accurate, so we would actually want to beat them and be accurate with predicting disease and activity and all. So I would like to thank those who helped me, mentored me, coached me during my training and also during the years that followed, and also with my ARRS project. Now what ARRS Scholarship did for me in a nutshell, since 2013, July 1st, when I got the scholarship, I was able to publish 49 peer-reviewed manuscripts. All of them are on PubMed, 20 more are in the pipeline. I could develop international collaborations. I got 2 university grants. I got 1 NIH grant as a co-investigator. I did an MBA, executive MBA, received several awards, and this 3rd child was also born during that time period. So people always ask me, what are the essentials for success in grants and what can a career development grant do for you? and I thought that this would be the best place to not only give credit to this society and the scholarship and the donors to this scholarship, but also to acknowledge the fact of not only this society giving a platform, but also wings, as Red Bull claims. So essentials for success is you've got to have a novel idea or a novel spin on an established idea. You've got to have a mentor, you've got to have a story, you've got to have institutional support, funding resources. You've got to put up with many failures. I'll describe a few, and teamwork is essential for success in academia. Not every race is worth running. It is very important to know. We think somebody is doing something and we say, oh, we've got to do this. That's not how ingenuity sort of works. You've got to have a novel idea and you've got to forbear with that idea. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear. Your mentor, you've got to bring something to the plate. What the mentor will do for you, as my mentors did for me, they will establish a sense of urgency. They will remove all the barriers. They will make sure you don't give up when the going is tough. And it is not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent, but the one that is most responsive to change, as Charles Darwin said. Be ready for surprises in life. I'll tell you the surprises that I had. So I got this grant and I was deliriously happy. And one of my mentors just walked in, Sarini, thank you so much for coming by. So I got this grant and I was like, excellent, now I can make a change. So I write an IRB, I go to the IRB says, this is a prospective study, you're instituting change, management change in this patient. This, you need to go through all the riddles, so that's fine. The IRB took me 6 months to get approval. So I have the IRB approval, I have the funding, excellent, I've got university grants, I've got 50% time off. Start recruiting the patients, then I'm told, oh no, these are cancer survivors. So you've got to have another IRB approval from the cancer center. That takes another 6 months. Excellent, that's done. Let's recruit the patients. No, you've got to go to government grants and register your grant there. Because it is a prospective study, you're going to institute treatment. So there were 3 IRBs that I had to write, and it took me a year and a half before I could even start looking at which patients I was going to recruit. Anyway, that was done. So those were surprises, but I did fortunately overcome those. Clear directions. So you've got to make sure you seek directions from those who know what they're talking about and who understand where you're coming from. Otherwise, these are the directions sometimes we all will get. Remember, you've got to have the clinician on board, you've got to have the clinical team on board, you've got to have your boss on board, and you've got to have the bigger boss, your wife, on board. So when I started doing all of that and we had the 3rd child, my wife said, honey, I love you and I love your career, but we've got a 3rd child. Now you're needed at home as much as you're needed at work. So make sure that you've got all the bases covered, because life is unexpected. As they say, life happens. Where there is a will, there is always a way. As I said, a year and a half it took me, but thank God it was people like Srini and other mentors who said, you cannot give up. You're 50% there, you're halfway there. Never ever give up. What if your plans do not work out? I had challenges, as I said. Remain fixated on your goals, but be flexible in your approach. Rumi said, if you're irritated by every rub, how will you ever be polished? We've all messed up at some stage in our life. Challenges are what makes life interesting, and overcome them is what makes life meaningful. Abraham Lincoln, the greatest president of the United States of America, from 1931 to 1960, 29 years, failed in every endeavor he overtook. He never gave up and became the President of the United States. So the moral of the story is, you cannot fail unless you quit. Hang on to your obsessions and your goals like cherished possessions. That is when we will be successful in life, and believe in yourself. The good thing is we are all radiologists, so we are fortunate that we can see all sides of the story. My wife, my twins, and as I said, the newborn during the grant. Thank you so much. I'll take questions, but before I let you ask questions, I have questions. I know, we all know this is United States, we all know this is Canada. Can we name the country here and the country here, please? Excellent. Who said that? Thank you so much. Which country is this? EU. Awesome. So I'll take questions now. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for that very inspiring and an interesting perspective, and it shows like that life is a real voyage, and we need to take our time and get where we're going in our own pace, and hold on to our dreams.